So a lot of people have the question, how do you make God real to you so that it becomes important in your life? And the simple answer is that the more a person educates himself about God and his Torah, the more a person thinks about how great God is, the more it becomes real in his heart. Now let's talk about that for a second. The heart is broken down into different segments. There's the internal aspect of the heart, and there's the outer aspect of the heart. The outer aspect of the heart is more framed towards understanding and breaking things down into words and meaning. The inner aspect of the heart has nothing to do with understanding. It's an intense feeling where a person, for example, knows that he himself exists, that he is alive, and he is important because of that feeling, that he sees it very clearly in his mind's eye about who he is, and that'll take precedence over anything else in his life. And a person will give up anything in order to continue living. We say that prophecy that took place by Moshe Rabbeinu was on that level, what we call Rias Ein Halev, that his heart saw the Eibishter in a very real way, not necessarily in the actual physical vision, but in his mind's eye. And we say that every person has to try to get to this point of loving and fearing God, where it becomes very, very real to the person, to the point where it's beyond understanding, to the point where understanding would cause a person to speak it out in actual words and letters and have meaning behind it. But when it hits the point where it's, we call the Pnimius Halev, the inner dimension of the heart, the person just explodes with a roar. We say that God sits at night and he roars. What is that roar all about? He's trying to convey to us a tremendous sense of love, and we're able to return that love and feel that love if a person prepares himself properly. And it would require a person to feel low about himself, how distant he is away from God, similarly to how a person sees himself distant, let's say, from a father to a son, or a son to a father, where we say generally by Sukkot, the Yidden to Eibishter is like a son returning to his father after not having been with him a whole year, and it creates a tremendous amount of simcha. So while the son sees the father coming closer, it awakens in the son a tremendous amount of love. This love is very different than the love that somebody would have, the child would have, had he heard his father just in earshot coming near him. Because that would describe itself, because that would apply itself to an area of understanding in the brain, or the outer aspect of the heart. If we're talking about seeing something for its ultimate depth, where it becomes the most real possible, we're talking about you need to actually see it. Sometimes that's seeing physically, and sometimes it's seeing in your mind's eye. Like we say that when Mashiach comes, we're going to see God in a way where it's in our mind's eye. We're going to see Rias Ein, the seeing of Rias Ein HaSeichel, that the brain will recognize it as being very, very real, which is way, way beyond understanding. And as a result of this, a person cries out the same way as an echo back to God, that God is crying out to the person. We say God is roaring to Knesset Yisrael, he's roaring to the Jewish people, and he wants that we should return from where we are, similarly to a person that's stuck in a very deep pit, where you would need an extra extension depending on how deep the person is. We're right now lost in a very deep gullus, but at the same time, in order to drag us out of that gullus, God roars, and that roar comes from a place which is higher than the revelation of godliness that took place during the time of Beis Hamikdash, during the time of the temple. And this only is brought about because of the fact that we're sitting in a very deep galus. Because if you want to drag something out from a very low depth, you need something that comes from the highest of high. This is also similar to what we say about the simple voice of the shofar that cries with just an outburst of incomprehensive explosion of the heart, and where the person wants to become one and united back with God. So to answer the original question with how does a person make God more real to him, the more a person comprehends in godliness, the more chassidus that a person learns, eventually this makes its way from a person's brain or the outer dimension of the heart, and it ends up in the inner dimension of the heart, where the person feels connected to God in a way where he sees it as a very real thing. And we saw that realness by Matan Torah, where God revealed the ultimate truth to us, and it causes a person to aspire back to God and become one with him. And the more a person makes it real, the more a person will recognize the true source of his life's existence, that it's all God. And we look forward to the day where a person doesn't just have to learn about godliness. We look forward to the day where Mashiach comes, where we'll be able to experience it in the Riyas Ein HaSeichel or Riyas Ein HaLev, where a person will be able to feel it, that it's very, very real, and there won't be any questions anymore. Thank you for joining.